share everyone after the session. There we go. If you can just select continue. Before we go any further, I'll just see who's here. Oh, great to see so many people getting involved. Hannah from the Magic Club in Lancashire. Who else is here? Charlotte in Manchester from MAC, and Ruth in Watford. People from all over the place. We've got South London, we've got Bristol, and Home Farm, Rebecca at Home Farm. And Hand Activities CIC. Great to see you all here today. Thanks so much for joining us. Leading today's session is Karina Hartwig. For those of you who don't know Karina, she is otherwise known as the Funding Doctor, and she has personal experience of fundraising for community projects and setting up small enterprises too. And she's taken that experience and worked extensively across the world of fundraising to support organisations and charities, social enterprises to find funding. So she's delivered popular workshops for Action Funder, for Semble generally, and for the likes of the Eden Communities organisation, voluntary sector training, Big Lunch Extras. And she's also worked for organisations like the Big Lottery Fund and the Plunkett Foundation. So it's really brilliant to get her expertise here today to talk to us all about speaking the funder's language. And this is the third of a brilliant three-part workshop series that Karina has delivered for Action Funder. So just before I hand over to Karina, a reminder to post any questions you have in the chat as we go through the session, and we'll come to them at the end. Right, let's get going. Over to you, Karina.
Thank you, Lorna. Hello, everybody. Before I introduce myself officially and properly to you all, I would like to kind of get a little bit of an idea of how confident you are currently about using the correct, the funding terminology. And we've prepared a little poll for you, and if you've attended webinars from us before, here it is. So if you could just let us know very briefly by voting how confident you are currently about using the correct funding terminology. Brilliant, all the votes are coming in. A few more to vote. 76% of you have voted, 88%, nearly there. 2 more votes missing, I think. But the majority I can see are a little confident, which is lovely, and hopefully you get to, I can share a lot with you today. 27% of you are somewhat confident, so in the middle, and we have a few experts in the room, actually 2 who are quite confident. So please share all your knowledge as well with us all in the chat. So thank you out here, and Karina has just shared, well, we can kind of close the poll now, so that's brilliant. And I will just go and get my slides up. Oh, 1 second. Sorry, lovely people. I need to. Just 1 second. There we go. Karine, could you please take the poll down because it's still showing on the screen? Or is it just on my screen? Oh.
It's not
that's okay.
On my screen.
Oh, okay, then it was on my screen. Sorry, but I've managed to remove it now. So can everyone see the slides now, and hopefully a little bit of me and the others? In that case, I can get started properly. So thanks again, Lorna, for the introduction, and always thank you very much for the support of the lovely Semble team from Perrine. So hello to you all again. My name is Karina Hartwig, and I'm also known as the Funding Doctor. I have to do that for the last time in the series, so sorry about that. Some of you might know me by now, and for those of you who don't, a very warm welcome to the last of the workshops in this series. I want to share with you my experience as a volunteer for a successful community project, but also as a grant maker. And as you can imagine, I had to learn a lot fast. Today, we're going to talk about speaking the funders' language. This is, for most of you, maybe a new language, and it's fairly easy. And hopefully I can make it a bit more accessible to you all so that you can go on and secure some funding on Action Funder. Because if I learned this new language to secure funding, I know that you too, you can. I just need to move a few things around here on my screen again. Bear with me for a second. Sit. So here a quick overview of what we're going to cover in the next 20 minutes or so. We're going to look at focus areas first, why these are relevant to secure funding on Action Funder. We are also going to revisit our outcome triangle from the last workshop, just to hone down on those special words and understand their meaning as part of making a clear ask for funding. And finally, if you missed the storytelling workshop from last week by the knowledgeable Teresa Litzer at Lightful, we're going to recap to make sure we're all using the kind of funding power words to pull at the funders' heartstrings to secure that funding. So without further ado, let's get started. And as a little icebreaker, I would like us to do a little online word search to have some fun and to crack that jargon. For that, we have prepared a word search for you, which I will try, which Perrine can maybe share in the chat, the link, please, and I will also share the screen. So you will get in the chat a link to a Jamboard, and if you click at that link, that allows you to use this Jamboard, but I will also share my screen now so that we can see what happens. Now, okay, we've got someone. What I'd like you to do, if you can, is kind of choose a pen tool or a highlighter. And then you can go and find the words that are beneath and that we're going to look for. So for example, we're going to look for the word beneficiary. Oh, someone has found impact. Evaluation, beneficiary, excellent, you're finding them. And as you're finding them, if you can maybe unmute yourself if you feel comfortable to do that, and maybe tell us a little bit what you think that word kind of means. I guess we have to do it a bit out one at a time. I guess I'll take the little pen and I cross out which ones we found. So we found output, we found problem, we found monitoring, we found impact, we found beneficiaries, you found aim, which is upside down, and we've got the need as well. Yay, activity, well done. And outcome, yeah, we got. So is there just evaluation missing? Oh, there it is. Yes, of course it is. Brilliant. Wow, you were so fast. I hope you enjoyed that. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen for now, but I hope you enjoy that a little bit. And I'm going to share again my presentation. So bear with me 1 second till I find my backdrop again. That's right. So that's brilliant. I hope you enjoyed that a little bit, and I hope it was a bit of fun to warm you up and get your brains going. If you recognized most of these words, that's great. But if you didn't, don't worry. I will explain the meaning of each of these today. So now you should be ready to come with me and dive a little bit deeper into the world of the funder to master their language. So when you want to learn the funder's language, the first thing you need to do is to understand their point of view. Where they're coming from, what's in it for the funder, why are they funding? And I will try to unpick this a bit so that you're finding it easier to speak the funder's language. Well, when you look at this photo, do you recognize any of those motivators? Do good, feel good, and look good? Is that what drives you too? I can see a few of you nodding. That's good. So great, because you and the funder have exactly the same motivators in common. And I will tell you a little bit more in the next slide what I mean. So funders do not fund for the fun of funding. Funders have an agenda for funding, a reason to fund projects. They want to see their money doing good. They want to do good. And more locally these days. And different funders will have different areas of focus or interest because they know there is a need and they want to do something about it. So the funders on Action Funder know that it's a good idea for the world and their business to do purposeful things like giving to charities, social enterprises, or community groups. They might perhaps have budgets at the moment that go into international charities or other kind of national charities. But by giving with Action Funder, they get to fund like-minded organizations in their local areas and get stories and impact reporting to showcase the difference they're making, their money is making. So the focus areas are broadly speaking and in alphabetical order on Action Funder: arts and culture, animal welfare, education and employment, climate and nature, food action, mental health and well-being, neighborhood, physical health and sport, poverty and homelessness, sustainable consumption and production. So these are all on the Action Funder website and are loosely based on the global goals for sustainable development. They basically, the funders, want to do good in the areas that are aligned with their businesses, possibly aligned to their corporate social responsibility agenda, or around areas that their audiences and customers care about. So your job is to do a little bit of research about the funder to see what rocks his or her boat around doing good. Now, when you do good, it makes us really feel good. And automatically we have a big smile on our faces. We start to have a purpose, and as a funder, it will make us feel good if we see that things improve and get better in our local areas and in the focus areas that we care about. And when we all have this massive smile on our faces, it makes us also look good. Not just because looking at a friendly, smiling face is nice. Now, funders also want to look good in terms of knowing that their funding creates a ripple effect of happiness, if you like, of doing good to many more people over a longer period of time. And this is also called impact. Additionally, the funder is most likely to be accountable to demonstrate that their money is making a difference. And that is why it is crucial that you can demonstrate your impact and that you have a solid budget. We have run a workshop on each subject, and if you missed them, speak to the lovely Action Funder team. So back, your job is to tell the funder how your project is helping them to look good. They are often too remote from local grassroots needs, and they rely on you to do the good in your areas, but with their funding. And the last aspect of looking good I'm inviting you to think about is how your projects fit in with local strategies, with regional and national ones, perhaps even with global ones. Again, also from the funder's point of view. Now, why do you think you should be aware of your local strategies? Perhaps some of you might want to share why you should be aware of local strategies in the chat function. Could you do that for us? That would be great. Lorna, I might need your help. I can't see the chat at the moment. I don't know if there's anything coming in.
Nothing coming in at the moment.
Okay.
Local, in terms of local strategies, are there any nudges on that question that we can?
Yeah. So I guess if it's really silent on the chat, it's perhaps who has looked at their local strategies, at the sustainable strategies, at community strategies from their local authorities? No.
If anyone has got in touch with their local council and asked them about their environmental or social strategies.
Yes, yes. So I would really strongly recommend that you do that, because it allows you to join in with the conversation, what is happening at your local level, and is really important. It also helps you get further with kind of learning the language, because you will find the important words in those strategies, because the strategies are basically an outline on what needs to happen to improve your local area. It can also demonstrate your awareness of those strategies and how they are relevant to your project, or how your project fits in with those. And it can also cement a feeling of trust, that you are knowledgeable as well and actually know what's going on in your local areas, and that all makes you look good. So hopefully that has clarified that a little bit. So yeah, go on.
There's been response in the chat just to say that people haven't thought about this yet, but now that they have,
okay, that's brilliant.
Will be followed up.
That's good. That's what I'm here for. Excellent. So now you understand the funder a little bit better. It's time to look at outcomes. When you want to speak the funder's language fluently, it's really important to be crystal clear about your outcomes, because this is what funders fund. Outcomes are the changes that your project brings about. And in the next few slides, I want us to briefly look at the outcome triangle, which I have adapted from the Charities Evaluation Services, which are now sitting under the NCVO, which is the Council for Voluntary Organizations. And to help you with formulating your outcomes better, so that the funder totally gets what positive changes you are trying to achieve through your activities. So your project is about positive changes, right? And as in the previous workshops, I would like us to use the example of a community growing project to illustrate the outcome triangle and the outcomes. So here it is, the outcome triangle. The outcome triangle is really useful to demonstrate the correlation of the different elements of your project and how these bring on the changes that you are aiming for. Essentially, it helps you to illustrate what changes your program or initiative is hoping to bring about. So let's take a closer look by starting at the bottom of the triangle. Most of you will naturally start by describing your activities or interventions when you're approaching a funder. You will have a series of outputs linked to your activities. So your activities would be to plant new flower beds, or activities in the case of our community growing project could be plant some food plant some food. So Directly linked to your activities are some outputs, and outputs are the results which are achieved immediately after implementing an activity. In our example, the amount of new flower beds created, or the number of vegetables grown, or the variety of plants are all your outputs, or how many volunteers have come forward to help you with that. These are outputs. Okay, so activities and outputs at the bottom of the pyramid. But funders do not fund activities, which are the bottom blue area of the triangles. Funders fund outcomes, which are the medium-term changes or results of your activities. It really helps to focus in particular on the pink outcomes block. Many funding applications fail because applicants forget to define clear outcomes, as there is a tendency to get carried away with just describing the activities. We will come back to the outcomes in a minute. Let's just take a look at the other elements on the outcome triangle. So in order to speak successfully the funder's language, you will also need to describe which problem you have identified and why the problem exists. These are the underlying causes, and I've depicted them with the ear. For this, it's very helpful to carefully listen to your community and to really dig deeper to truly understand the problem and why it exists. You will also need to explain and demonstrate to the funder how big and how important the problem is. And this is what's called the need, which is just in the bottom left-hand corner of the slide. You will need to find statistics for that and numbers. So how big is the problem in your area? And that's where your strategies will help you as well. Once you have truly understood the problem and the need for your project, you will be in a position to propose your solution to the problem, which is the overall point of your project really, and its aim, which sits at the top of the triangle. So that's the solution. You will also need to tell the funder whose life will change for the better because of your initiative. This group of people is called the beneficiaries, who are on the right-hand side now at the top. And finally, the bit that funders fund, we arrive back at the pink middle block, the outcomes, which are the desired midterm changes that are expected to happen in a particular context. Only when you have defined your outcomes will you be able to measure the impact. And that's the impact measurement indicators there. You should also tell the funder how you will measure the changes and over which period of time. Now, impact are the changes over a longer period of time for a greater group of people, a little bit like the ripples on the water that I had before. Now, if you're a little bit confused, please don't worry. There is a really useful analogy that can help you with defining your outcomes. And it's the analogy of stepping through the door. The door allows you to step from the current grim situation into the newly improved, much better space. And all you need to do is describe what has changed for the better. Let's use the example of our community growing project to illustrate this. Here is what the space currently looks like. It looks a bit sad, slightly unloved, and really underused. No one is out and about. It's just not used. And it makes everyone feel disconnected from the supposedly communal space. And there is no sense of belonging or love or pride here. And certainly not much nature growing on here either. So then you step through the door into the new space. And you step into this vibrant community space. The community is out and about. Different generations and different cultures are growing stuff together. There's a sense of community, ownership, and pure joy and fun. So what are outcomes? of this example project. Remember, outcomes are the changes, the positive ones, hopefully, and some negative ones, that occur as a result of your activities in the short to medium term. Outcomes have to be achieved to support progress towards your overall aim, your longer term goal. Outcomes should use words that indicate change, such as increased or improved, or less, decrease, and also use active language. For example, improved, expand, develop, more, better. So maybe now that you've stepped through the door with me, and I applaud you for that, perhaps you can share a few outcomes for our example project in the chat that you could formulate. And Lorna, if there's any sharing going on, could you just help me here, please?
Sure, happy to help.
Is there any ideas how you could formulate an outcome? So kind of stepping through the door, what has improved?
We're looking for kind of ideas for how you can measure.
Not measure, how you can kind of say it out loud what has actually changed. So there's maybe a greater community cohesion could be an outcome.
Okay, so we have one here that's the number of people spending time in the space will increase.
Yes, so more people spending longer time in the space. Yeah, that's brilliant.
Another from Sarah, children's level of fitness will increase.
Yeah, so more children will be fitter.
And they're coming in thick and fast now. We've also got a greater sense of community connection.
Yes, absolutely. So greater community cohesion or connection, that's really important. Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah. What happens as a result when we have greater cohesion, when we're spending more time with each other? There might be a decrease in depression or loneliness. That could be an outcome as well.
We also have another one here, which is children will understand where food comes from and make healthier food choices. Sarah.
Yeah, so some learning is going on. Brilliant.
And Dee has said that mental health will improve and gardening is great for mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. So an improved mental health, yeah, and perhaps a decrease in depression or loneliness. Brilliant.
So more on improving health and well-being as well.
That's excellent. Super. Thank you very much for sharing. That's excellent. So you have now a better understanding what an outcome is, and ideally you want about 3 outcomes. If you're going for external kind of outcome funders, generally they want to see a few of your outcomes, because once you define them, then you can start measuring them. And you also want to make them SMART, your outcomes, so specific, measurable, relevant to your aim, and time bound. I can speak about that a little bit more in the Q&A if there's any around kind of the SMART outcomes, but I would just like to kind of crack on a little bit for now, if that's okay. So hopefully you are now better placed to speak the funders' language and be crystal clear about your outcomes, because these are what funders fund. Finally, to be a true master of speaking the funders' language is absolutely vital that you tell a compelling story. Let me give you a few pointers on how you do that best, so that you pull at the funder's heartstrings and convince the funder to fund you. If you attended the Action Funder Storytelling webinar from last week with Teresa, you will have learned a lot already. But I would like to take a couple of minutes to use some of her tips and combine them with mine to help you tell compelling stories that trigger the desired action from the funder to give you the funds and not the project down the road. So just very quickly, how can you do that on Action Funder? Well, you will have to prepare a narrative of your story and a 90-second video pitch. And just as a little tip, you can actually fit around 150 words in a 90-second video pitch. For both, you can use the storytelling arc and use all the elements from the outcome triangle for this. So here are the basic elements that make up a compelling story, and it's important to have a structure. The arc can help you with this. Here is how. So have a beginning in which you introduce yourselves, state the problem, its underlying causes, and how big the problem is, and use a hook, something that makes the funder curious about your project and shows that you know what problems the funder deeply cares about and what needs to be solved in your area. Then you progress to the middle, also called sometimes the plot. Here you project your specific solution to this problem and who will benefit from it, and describe how sad the actual current situation is and what barriers and obstacles you need to overcome, including, of course, lack of money. The climax could be describing your top outcomes, the changes that your project will bring about if you have the funder support, what difference your project will make short to medium term, and what impact it will have in the longer run for many more people, if only you had the funder support. Show your passion and your excitement here. If you are making the funder part of the solution and binding him or her emotionally to your project, then you have nearly won. And during the resolution, which is when it comes down a little bit, where you transition towards the end of your story, you can state what help you need. And as you have done your homework and worked out your budget, you can tell the funder exactly how much you need and what you need it for. And finally, at the end of your story, your bid, don't forget to make the ask. Invite the funder to fund you. By the way, if you are writing a storyboard for you with your pitch, as I said, you have about 150 words that you can fit into the 90 seconds video time. So a strong story really helps to underpin your funding bid and helps to pull at the funder's heartstrings by combining emotions and actions. And if you don't ask, you don't get. This brings us to the end of the time we have today. Hopefully you feel more confident in speaking the lingo. Perhaps you're now fluent, or today has made you a master. Remember to tell people why you do what you do and the impact it has on people's lives. Make sure that you choose a funder that you know wants to do good in the same areas as you do. You will both know what you're talking about, and you will be a perfect match when it comes to doing good. Make sure you look good and you do your homework. Tell a compelling story, and together you will feel good. Want to look better than anyone else? You need to prove that you're doing the maximum good to the maximum number of people by proving that you are addressing a need and you will have a big impact. So that's thank you for me for now, and good luck to you. I will stop sharing my screen and I can take some questions.
So if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or just take your microphone off and ask them. That's absolutely fine as well. It's great to hear lots of different voices in the room. So we welcome that. Really, really great session, Karina. So I'm sure a lot of that information is sinking in at the moment. But do all take this opportunity while we have Karina here in the room for a few minutes to ask any questions you have on outcomes and jargon and storytelling, or anything else for that matter.
Can I ask a question?
Please do.
Of course. Me. The project that we're working on is a counselling service, and we need £15,000 to cover the counselling service for a year, which is 3 counsellors who would work with, in essence, 2.5 people each per year, because they'd start the 3rd one but not finish it in the year. And something that I'm coming up against is not being able to put forward, even though that sounds like a small number, like it'll only be helping 6-7 people in a year, it's really, really important. And it is a small number, but that's the number, that's how much it costs. So I was wondering if you had any advice on getting that across.
Again, there it's about the outcome. So how are people's lives changing in relation to the 15K that you're basically asking for the funder for the 6 people, you said?
Yeah,
roughly. So I guess what you need to do, where you need to do a bit of your homework, is to really do some to construct a strong bid, a strong ask, and demonstrate or explain how you will measure the changes that the intervention makes in those people's lives. So if these people are then more able to be active members of the society again and can go out and find work, you could think about kind of a social return of investment as well. So by kind of donating £15,000, you transforming people's lives, and they can go on and earn their own money instead of living off the state, if you like, or improve health, and they can go and do things. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah. It's really specific counselling, because it's for patients that have CRPS, complex regional pain syndrome. So with complex regional pain syndrome, because the amount of pain you are in is really high all of the time, that leads to depression, anxiety, quite often PTSD. So I don't know if it will get them kind of back into work, for example, but it will help them manage and cope with their situation. There's a really high suicide rate with CRPS.
That's really sad to hear, Dee, but maybe we'll have a conversation after the webinar. Quite happy to help a little bit afterwards. We also prepared a little poll, haven't we, Lorna?
We have. And before we go to that, I'd just like to call out that Sarah asked about other ways to measure impact.
Yeah.
And that you covered some of that in a previous session, and that we will send those session recordings round in the follow-up email. So yeah,
we had more time in the other session, Sarah, to go a bit deeper. We didn't have that today, unfortunately.
So should we come to the polls now?
Yeah, that would be lovely. Yeah,
and then I can wrap a few things up.
Okay, so we've got a few more little questions for you before Lorna will tell you a little bit more about Action Funder, or if you've got any specific questions. So if you could maybe just answer kind of 3 little questions. So on a scale of 1 to 5, and here you get a hint, that's how you can measure as well. 1 is not at all, and 5 absolutely. Please tell us if your knowledge has improved after the webinar, or the webinars if you watch more than 1. On a scale of 1 to 5, do you feel that you will retain, or that you retain some of the knowledge taught today or in the webinars? And the last question is, on a scale 1 to 5, would you recommend the webinars to somebody else? And I'll just go quiet and let you do the voting. Brilliant, all the voting is coming in. Nearly there, 90% have voted, so. Oh yes, and I'm just seeing in the chat, we will also send you some resources and some links after the session. Also, for those who don't know, you can save the chat as well. At the bottom of the chat box, there is a little box with 3 dots. If you right click on there, you have a drop down and then you can save the chat there. And it looks like the voting has kind of, everyone has voted, Perrine, so thank you very much. So we can kind of take that off the screen then maybe. Thank you. Brilliant. Over to you, Lorna.
Great, really good to see some high numbers there on improved knowledge, and thank you so much, Karina. Just in the last kind of 60 seconds before we all go, I'll just say it's a jam-packed half hour, and I for one feel much better equipped to face funding jargon and tell a compelling story to help with the funding process. We'll be sending around the recording of the session and include Karina's social media and contact details, so do look out for more workshops from Karina, and look out for workshops from Action Funder in general. We'll be having sessions on everything from volunteer management to using social media to promote your project. Those are coming up in the next few weeks. And finally, thanks so much to everyone for coming along. It was great to have people from everything from, there was a Samba based community organisation in Devon to veterans in crisis in Sunderland, so a real spread. And if you have any questions on Action Funder, do stick around now, and Karina and myself will be happy to answer them. And otherwise, I hope you'll have a great afternoon, and a final big thanks to Karina for sharing your knowledge today.
Thank you so much. It was lovely to see you all again and see some new faces. Good luck.
Thanks so much, everyone. Perrine, would you like to stop the recording?